Mike Paralack here to entertain you with the help of Marty Simon. Yo way umbare yo era ya rumranji yo way umbare yo era ya rumranji yo era ya rumranji. The theme to Lexx, a show I watched almost a decade ago. Last night I decided to watch it again. I only watched the first movie, but yeah, it's a different show. But I always look, whether it's music, movies, whatever, I always am on the lookout for different. If I had to explain it to an outsider, it's kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe meets 1984. If you can process that. Yeah, it's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe meets 1984. It's set in this world where there's two different zones to outer space, the dark zone and the light zone. And these people exist, these 20,000 leagues of planets in the light zone, which is kind of dictated by this insect-like creature called his divine shadow. And whenever one of the characters in the show shows, I worship his divine shadow, and they have this gesture they do and everything, it reminds me of in real life when extreme leftists say, give all your money to people who support democratic policies because they're the only ones who can save us because the climate is changing. The climate. That's what these people in this show remind me of when they go, I worship his divine shadow. Yeah, Lexx. It's the reason I say 1984, that really only applies to the first couple of shows, because then it does kind of morph into a more of a Lost in Space kind of theme going on, only more aimless, because more aimless than Lost in Space. It was all about trying to get home. They don't really have a home, so they're looking for a home. They end up on the dark zone. Oh, the dark, and they're kind of scared. Oh, we're in the dark zone in outer space. Oh, what are we gonna? What's gonna happen to us? Being in the dark zone now. But one of the more intriguing things that the Kai character in the show, who was basically a reanimated corpse for the purpose of being an assassin for his divine shadow, quote unquote, his divine shadow. But one of the intriguing lines he says is at the end of the first part is, in the dark, or in the light zone I was darkness. Perhaps in the light zone, or in the dark zone. Perhaps in the dark zone, I may be light. I thought that was pretty intriguing. But the show, the reason it's called Lexx is basically a spaceship, mechanical and biological, and very insect-like. So it has the ability to sustain them in outer space. So they can take their time with the whole finding a home thing in outer space while being on this ship. The ship was originally designed by as basically an escape ship for his divine shadow, because that's self-serving. That reminds me of elitists in the real world. Again, there's so much relativity to real life in this show. Yeah, the elitists in the real world, elitist leaders, when they think, wow, how will this ensure our power and control over the hearts and minds of the masses? But so the Divine Shadow originally created this Lexx spaceship for the purpose of his own benefit, and the Lexx basically lives on donated human organs. Yeah, it's a different show, folks. Because that is the way of the order of his divine shadow. You know, the guy who's looking out for all the the masses of people, you know, who's only looking out for their best interest. Boy, art imitating life, imitating art, huh, folks? But, so he was going to use this thing to blow up this Lexx, this ship, to blow up planets that his divine shadow saw fit to blow up. Unfortunately, in the context of the story, these nomads, mainly Lexx and Stanley Tweedle, who is basically the poster child for every human trait that you would despise, this guy has. At least subtly. But they kind of, and I say it this way because they kind of hijacked subsequently, because they more or less fell into it, while in their own way just trying to escape from the tyrannous order of his divine shadow. But the Stanley character, if you could, every despisable human trait you can imagine of being in one human being, that's the Stanley Tweedle character. And he gets despite his colorful personality, they still have to deal with him because he has the key. He subsequently got the key, so therefore he controls flying this Lexx spaceship thing, insect thing. The key to it is in his hand, so they kind of have to deal with his rather less than perfect personality, because he's the only one that can fly the thing and control the Lexx. But the guy has no no sense of moral or honor. But remember, not to give the character sympathy, but remember, he grew up in a tyrannical governing system. I worship his shadow. Give all our money to democratic policy, to blue states. Give all our money to them, because they're the only ones who could save us from the changing climate. The climate is changing. Life imitating art, folks. Oh, God. But, so anyways, this despicable human being basically is the only one who can control and fly this getaway spaceship. The other character, Zev, when we first see her in the show, we see she's basically an overweight young lady, visibly unhealthy and unhappy, a visibly unhappy soul, who is condemned under the rules of his divine shadow, who is condemned for the crimes of not performing her wifely duty and embarrassing her husband. A little bit of, if you ever watched the movie, a little bit of background. She was meeting her husband for the first time at the altar, who was basically a spoiled brat. So in his verbally insulting her, she decks him. So she is condemned by the powers that be, his divine shadow, and sentenced to be. She hopes, she actually is disappointed because she wants these I don't want to be in this miserable existence anymore. But the penance she gets is she's sentenced to be turned into a love slave with a very high libido and love for men, but not Stanley. And from a completely heterosexual point of view, I don't blame her. I don't like Stanley. He's a putz. Stanley Tweedle is a putz. He has no honor, no moral, no honor. But so that brings me to the other kind of sort of character, being one of the main characters in the show, 790. Basically a robot head who, during her transformation into a love slave, she only gets the body transformation along with some extras. You'd have to see the show to understand that. It's a different show, folks. But this 790 robot head basically got the love slave mind transfer. So he's basically the comic relief in the series as the series plays out. You know, if there was a person who never knew love as a regular human being, one might see why the Zev character would take to sleeping with a robot head who is constantly praising her for just being, who is the light of his life. He's completely devoted to the Zev character. Oh, God. The Kai character, even though he originally was meant to be a reanimated corpse assassin for the will of his divine shadow, he inadvertently, through all this, ends up gets his memory back of who he used to be and everything. He was like the last of a race of beings that is described in the show as dreamers. And when we first see him in the show, he's basically a soldier in this very colorful garment. But after his transition to being an assassin for the divine, quote, divine shadow, he's basically same kind of a Tara, looks like the same material, but it's basically black. It takes on giving him a more goth appearance. But anyways, he is the only man, because he's the protector of the occupants of the Lexx, he is the man that Zev really goes for. Unfortunately, I don't want to go too much into detail of this, because this, this is YouTube and everything, but let's just say Kai is reanimated corpse, so, with a limited time. So let's just say it doesn't work. It doesn't work the way that a physically healthy woman would need it to work. Stanley, on the other hand, does have one that works, but Zev has no interest whatsoever in Stanley, and I don't blame her. I don't blame her one iota. It's a different show, though. Lexx. Like I said, I watched the whole series not quite, but almost a decade ago, and I decided to watch it again recently and share a little bit of my thoughts on it. But, and the Lexx, the Lexx is, I guess I should talk a little bit about the Lexx, because the Lexx is more than a spaceship. The Lexx is also a kind of, sort of character in the series. The Lexx is not just a spaceship, but it's kind of a character of its own. It lived on, as I said, human organs back when it lived in the light zone and was under the control of the divine shadow. Holy and righteous Democratic Party. Democratic social elites. Life imitating art. Oh boy, I better not let this video get too long. But so anyways, yeah, Lexx. I'm always looking for different, whether it's music or shows or movies. I'm always looking for different. It's yeah, that's the only way I can think to describe it to somebody who's never heard of the show or never seen it, doesn't know anything about it. It's basically Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe meets 1984, but in time the show will basically morph into more of a Lost in Space, but more aimless, because like I said, they don't really have a home. But there's a lot. I recall, it's been a while since I just started watching it again, but I recall there's a lot of intriguing episodes. There's even one whole season where they keep bouncing back and forth between a planet known as Planet Water and a planet known as Planet Fire. And they never really come out and say it, but you could say that these planets are representatives of heaven and hell. But they never actually say it, though. And I think in the 4th season, if I remember correctly, they actually, because they're in the quote, dark zone of space, they actually land at some point in a planet that could justifiably be considered or called Earth, or Earth-like at least. But, yeah, I had to take a break. That's why I haven't posted any videos for a couple days. That's why I decided to just kick back and watch Lexx, because I needed relief, mental relief from the world. But anywho, Mike Parallax, thank you for your time. One more time. Marty Simon. Yo way oh humbare yo re ra ya rum bronji yo way oh humbare yo re ra ya rum bronji yo way ra ya rum bronji.